What's up guys, Tom Fubo back at you with another one. This time I'm doing a tutorial. It's a little bit different. I'm going to teach you guys how to make a music production computer from scratch. Now let's get right into it. Alrighty, so let's go through the component list. So this is item number 1, the most important item. It is the CPU. This one here is the Ryzen 9 3900X. This one is the biggest bad boy you can get on the market. It's got 12 cores, 24 threads. What the hell does that mean? To put it simply, basically the more threads you have, the more tasks your computer can multitask at the same time. So it's good at multitasking. It's not going to clock out. That's really all you need to know. You can look at specific specs on their websites, whether you're going for an Intel CPU or a Ryzen. So I must admit that the Ryzen 9 is probably a little bit of overkill. If you got a cheaper budget, you don't really need to get this. You can get anything from a Ryzen 5 to an i5 Plus. That CPU processing power will be perfectly enough to do all the audio production needs that you probably want. The only reason I've got this is because I like to be on the safe side of things. I used to have a lot of clipping issues on my i5 on the MacBook, so just to prevent that from happening, I decided to get this bad boy. Alright guys, so let's talk about motherboards. So motherboards are basically like a central hub where you connect everything in for your desktop so that it all works well. I would say there's no real standard for music production for motherboards. This is a gaming one. This is the X570 Aorus Elite Wi-Fi. So a couple of things you might want to consider. Get one with a Wi-Fi card so you don't have to go buy one and connect one in later. So one thing to bear in mind is how many PCIe slots your motherboard has. So this is helpful if you want to add extra cards for like SSD storage, if you want a GPU, if you want to use adapters for say USB-C or Thunderbolt 3. One specific example would be if you want to use an Apollo Twin on a desktop, right? Because they're only working for Mac for whatever reason. So the way to get around that is to install a PCIe adapter inside your desktop, and then that will have a Thunderbolt 3 or USB-C port where you can actually use that to connect the interface. So those are just things to bear in mind when picking out a motherboard. So let's talk about RAM, guys. So you might have heard a lot of music producers rambling on about this stuff. What does it all mean? So basically, RAM stands for Random Access Memory. So what RAM allows us to do is access large sample libraries. So I'll give you an example. So if you're a music producer that's working on, say, an orchestral arrangement and you need an oboe and some strings and a violin, all those audio files for those instruments, unless you're going to play them live, is going to be stored on your computer. Now you need to go and access that through your computer's memory to be able to put it into the DAW to make it work. So that's where it takes a bit of a taxing toll on your computer's RAM. And this can, one instrument can, take up, a couple gigabytes depending on how big the samples are. So you really need to have a good amount of RAM to be able to work through those sample libraries. So what I'd recommend for music producers, if you don't use a lot of those and you just record everything live, you don't need much RAM. Like 8 gigs would even be enough. I'd probably say 16 would be on the safe side for myself, and this setup I've done 32 gigs of RAM just because I want to have that option. Alright, so let's talk about storage. So the more storage the better, obviously. I've got 2 solid state drives at 1 terabyte each. So they've got, quite a bit of space. I recommend SSDs over hard drives because they are faster. They will retrieve the information quicker. So as music producers, that's going to help us out with our workflow. Now, the way that I've got it set up is ideal for music production. It helps alleviate the CPU a little bit, but it's probably negligible. But this is the way you would ideally set it up. So you'd have one SSD where you put your DAW, like your Ableton, your Logic, your Fruity Loops, and you put your plugins all into that storage. And then you have another one where you put all your samples. So that way you've got one that's permanently running as the primary, and then you've got that as the storage for all the samples. So that's the way that you would set up your storage on your computer to get the most optimal performance. So let's talk about graphics cards. Are they really essential for music production? Not really. They might help a little bit out on loading the UI of your plugin. So theoretically you can use more plugins at once. But the reason I've got a graphics card is because I do a little bit of video editing and just shoot a little bit of amateur music videos. So it's going to help me a lot in that process when I'm on Premiere Pro and loading up all those graphics. So I've got the 2060 Super. It's not like the best one, it's probably somewhere in between. They've already come out with the 3000 model, so you know, do a bit of research on that, but that's what I've got. Alright, so let's talk about cooling systems. So I've got the H100X, which is a liquid cooler, and that's situated directly on my CPU. Technically that's supposed to be quieter than a fan because it's a liquid cooling system, but it's still got fans attached to it, so I think that's pretty negligible. And having fans on your system is pretty inevitable because you need airflow coming in and you need airflow getting pushed out. So one way to mitigate that is really just put a gate on all your recordings. That should just cut it off. It's currently on right now and you can't really hear the fan, so it's not a big issue. If you're going to get a liquid cooler, make sure you don't get one that you have to top up with water all the time, because that's just bloody annoying. And that's all I've got to say about fans. So power supplies. So there's no real like specific goal for power supplies for a music production computer. Definitely just find one that's all compatible with your opponents. I've got the 750 watt gold. I know it's compatible because it's currently turned on and it's working, but I also asked the guy at the computer store. So if you're unsure, do some research, ask the guy at the computer store. It's not the most important thing, just make sure it works. Okay, so now to put it all together, you need a nice case to put all the components in and hide it and make it look nice and pretty. So I've got the Meshify Fractal case. It's a bloody massive case and it's got a nice little tempered glass. So if you like aesthetics, you can have some lights come through there. The important thing when picking out cases is to make sure that all the components fit. So you need to make sure that your motherboard's going to fit in there nicely. So definitely do a lot of research there, and then you need to see where you can put the fan. So a little bit of planning beforehand is helpful, so you can figure out, okay, so the motherboard goes in the bottom and the fan's going to be on the side there, on the top, and then out the back, yeah. And then you have all your cables and your power supply on the bottom in the shelf there. So you definitely want to do a lot of research on which case you get, because the last thing you want is a case that doesn't fit all the components, and that way you can't build a computer. So definitely go on Google, do your research there, ask the guys at the computer store, ask me if you want, leave a comment below. I'll see if I can help you out. And yeah, that's all you need to know about cases. So for computer monitors, I've got this lovely bad boy over here. So this is a Samsung 34-inch monitor. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's 3K resolution, so it looks amazing as well. And it's pretty big. So 34 inches is a good size. I think anything between like 20 to 30 inches is a pretty good size for music production, depending on the size of your home studio. Now this one's curved. A lot of people might opt for 2 screens and then just angle them so they're kind of both facing you, and then that way you can have one that has the arrangement view, the other one that's got all the master faders and mixers. So the reason I opted for the single screen over the double screen is because I already had enough problems multitasking, and you can also just split this one through the middle and then do the exact same thing that you would with 2 screens. You also have less cables. Theoretically, you're using less CPU, but that should be pretty negligible. But I just like the simplicity of just looking at one screen and having less moving parts. So that's why I've chosen this bad boy. Last but not least, you need a Goku statue. If you don't have a Goku statue, I don't know how you're making 5 beats. Like, you're honestly just doing it all wrong. Alrighty, so now that I've run through all the list of components, let's have a look at the build. Alright Fubi, I just made the new computer, we can listen to our new song. Like, do I need to set it up? Like, do I need Microsoft Word or like antivirus or anything like that? Yeah, look mate, you don't need any of that crap, hey? They're all just scams. Like, don't worry about that, just download Ableton, then we're ready to make some bangers. Let's just do it. So I hope you guys enjoyed my tutorial on how to make a music production computer from scratch. If you did, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and I've also opened up some new slots for music production lessons by little old me. So if you want to learn how to make bangers, hit me up, DM me on Instagram at TomVuble.